for President Laurie. Allow me now to introduce Dr. Lexi Lane. Dr. Lane is a specialist in integrative and functional medicine, also known as naturopathic doctor. She's a naturopathic doctor. I hope that's a proper pronunciation. And she helps leaders get their energy back, feel less stressed, and have improvement in their overall well-being. She got her doctorate at Boston University and has been practicing for 10 years. She studied with America's #1 confidence coach to improve her connection with people and enhance her positive influence with leaders worldwide. Dr. Lexi has been featured on numerous radio shows and podcasts. She's currently helping uplift those who are in a difficult times or in transition with 5-minute health and wellness segments for various meetup groups locally and internationally. Lexi tells me she's excited to be here to share her passion with our club, but I must also tell you that I've not met yet anybody so active. With all its challenges in 2020, Lexi was able to swim 50.36 miles, and she has biked 1,237.7 miles. And on top of that, she ran 383.3 miles and is still in business. That's amazing. I don't know where you find the time or the energy, and I've also seen her climbing mountains. So maybe she'll tell us a little bit about that energy. But for the Rotarians, please welcome Dr. Lexi Lane. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What a joy. I am going to share my screen here and get us into presentation mode. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. And you can all hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. I just want to say that all of you on this call has a light, and every single one of you has a specific purpose. And I love what President Leithion was saying about playing on your strengths versus your weaknesses, because playing on your strengths and your gifts to shine your light, that's the whole point. And so keeping your spark through dark times, my purpose today is to ignite. I want to be the ignition of your spark. And then what you do with that flame is completely up to you. So I'd like to start with, you are the light of the world. And of course, that comes from a really famous scripture. And it says, you are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds, and then you can glorify your God, Father in heaven, whatever your heart desires. It doesn't matter. The point is that you're shining your light. And one of the things that COVID-19 and 2020 has helped me to do was to realize I was playing it too small. As a provider and a clinician, I was in my little small 4 walls, kind of a little wallflower, and things started to happen within me, a desire to connect to community, and which is why I chose to connect with Rotary, because I said to myself, I need connection. We all need connection in a time where social isolation and social distancing is the lay of the land. And it's detrimental to our mental health and our overall well-being. And to have to persevere and find that connection in creative ways, this was one thing I knew how to do. That was to get engaged with Rotary. Now, Rotary I was involved with before COVID had hit, but that was one way that I really had decided that I needed to branch beyond my 4 walls. But when the pandemic hit, and we were provided with Zoom and webinars, and everybody was getting online, we were able to reach beyond our city walls and our state lines and reach beyond just North Carolina and even the United States of America. I've been able to reach beyond that. This is a perfect example. And so through my COVID-19 story in 2020, that is where I started to identify the message of keeping your spark in dark times, because I had to keep my spark, because as leaders, that's what we do. And as Rotarians, we are all leaders in our communities. That's our foundation. We're humanitarians. We serve others. We want goodwill, and we want to bring world peace. And how can we do that if your light begins to flicker? And I know in these times, there might be a moment where you're feeling like your light goes out. Now, I'm burying my grandfather today from COVID-19. I just got word that one of my cousins, the sister, has died. His mother is in the hospital with COVID. Every single one of us has been impacted and touched by this pandemic. And our light is going to flicker even though we're leaders. And there's been trials and tribulations and things that every single one of you are seeing and that you're facing in your own lives. And so how do you, as a leader, keep your light shining? And that's what my heart is being called to do. And so without further ado, I want to just share one thing with you. The first person you lead is you. You earn the right to lead others when they see you lead your own life well. Okay, so this is about taking care of you and checking in with you, because the better and stronger and healthier you are, the brighter your light's going to shine. And so you can spread that out beyond communities and countries and whomever your heart so desires. And it can be bright and influential and wonderful. And that's the whole purpose, right? That's the whole purpose of being a Rotarian anyway. So what I ended up doing during COVID is I had a lot of time to reflect and to really critically think through, how am I serving my patients and how am I serving my community and how can I do it better? And this is my little infographic that came out of this. So yeah, 2021 is not as exciting and as hopeful as we were hoping. The challenges we're facing in 2020, just because the calendar year flipped over doesn't mean they all went away. We're still facing it. And so 2021, I'd like to say, is we need to nurture and to build and put ourselves back together so that in 2022 we can blast off, okay? So things are not going to be just fixed overnight, and things are still going on. So we really do need to show up for us and then for others. So in my practice, yes, I would test and I would assess, and I would, I have these brain and nutrition assessment forms where we take mental wellness and health and we start connecting and seeing, is there a gut issue, a digestive issue? Is there a hormonal component? Is there, an immune issue with brain health? And then what I would do is I would supplement and target supplementation based on that. But the rest of what I do is an empowering and an educating on nutrition, exercise, and mindset. So that's what I want to spend the rest of this time talking about, because that's where really we truly are. Food is medicine. We are our building blocks, and we got to keep moving, because guess what? Your brain needs two things: fuel and oxygen. Fuel is our nutrition. Oxygen is exercise and movement and blood flow. Mindset, that's the spark. Now we have a lot of neurons firing up here in our brains, and it's very electrical. Well, guess what? Electricity travels pretty darn fast in water. So hydration, little small lifestyle tweaks like that can really help with brain fog, but it can help in balancing neurotransmitters in these really subtle but very powerful and useful ways. So that's what I'd like to do, is to empower you guys and to educate and see where you can make small little changes in your own life, but also in people who may not have a lot of resources. If you look around, there's actually more than you might realize. So with the Spark message, if you guys like to take notes, you can write down S, P, A, R, and K. These are my acronyms that I'm going to spend the rest of this time walking you through. And so one of the things I loved about John Maxwell's quote was, "And in crisis is an intense time of difficulty, requiring a decision that will be a turning point." So you can either decide that you're going to focus on the negativity and all the things that you can't do, or you're going to flip that coin over and you're going to see this as an opportunity. and an opportunity to use all your skill sets and strengths that you've been given to make a difference and to pull through. And we can pivot, or we can victimize. And I chose to pivot. And I also chose, well, I got to show up for myself. So I did a lot of online virtual Ironman series. And so that's why I ran and cycled and biked, because that was important to me. And we make time for what is important. And you've got to make time for movement, exercise. You've got to make time for your family and your loved ones. You've got to make time for prayer. You've got to make time for things that are really, really, really going to feed your soul so that you can be your best self. And President Lathon is saying, how did she find time? I found time because it's that important to me. So when we are in our minds for the anxiety and the depression, and we get stuck in the downward spiral is what we call that. So what is a downward spiral? It can be a negative self-talk, and we can get stuck in that rhetoric and the I can'ts and the I won'ts and the obstacles and the things that we tell ourselves are reasons why. It's limitations we're putting on ourselves. Media can be very much a downward spiral. Our environment, where we submerge ourselves, can be a downward spiral. And food, if we, there were so many times I went to the grocery store and I saw grocery baskets full of comfort foods, because that's what everyone is going for, right? It's very easy to submerge ourselves in the pizzas and the Doritos and the Cheetos and the sugar. Oh my gosh, I'm Halloween candy flying off the shelves, because that's what people were doing to self-soothe. But what they weren't realizing was that that's inflaming our brains even more, putting us in a more inflammatory state and not serving us. So what are we doing to create the downward spiral? And the S for seeing where it is you're going with your purpose is also about perspective. Because if we can begin to change our perspective, so this is it's the same spiral staircase, but now we're looking up. Instead of down, we're gonna start looking up for opportunities. We're gonna start shifting between, okay, I'm gonna spend less time on media, or in social media, I'm gonna choose to be a beacon of light and of hope and of positivity and a resource for people, instead of just informing the masses and feeding into negativity. So for you, it's all, we're all different, and we all have different ways to see this staircase. But in changing your perspective, just look at how your thoughts are feeding and serving you from a more positive perspective or a more anxious and depressive perspective. So that's number one. Number two with the S with sustenance is let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. So our brains require building blocks, serotonin, dopamine, GABA, all these neurotransmitters. Well, to build those requires healthy fats. It requires good digestion. It requires stable blood sugar. So what I want to leave you with in regards to food as medicine is, how are you feeding your body? And are you feeding it in a way that's going to support life in cell replication and repair and helping you to feel good, as opposed to the sugar, which is really inflammatory, alcohol, which I know we're doing a little sip and learn today, which is fine, but we don't want to overindulge in alcohol all the time. It's a depressant. Alcohol crosses the blood-brain barrier and can be very damaging to our memory banks in our brains. If you're anxious and you're drinking a ton of coffee and that's creating insomnia, oh, well, Dr. Lexi, I can drink coffee at 10 o'clock at night, but yet your chief complaint is anxiety. We need to look at that. It's a stimulant. So in regards to food, we can start to fine tune and think about, okay, what are my building blocks looking like? And I would advise healthy. And what I mean by healthy is, this apple here, you can see it growing on a tree. You can pick it, you can eat it. Applesauce is more processed. Apple juice, even more so. So when I talk about whole foods, what I'm talking about is, can you see it growing? Is it alive to you? Can you pull that carrot out of the ground? Versus V8, which is carrot and tomato juice, very processed. I'd rather you just eat the carrot, because the whole food is packaged so perfectly and beautifully. And the more you process it, the more you lose nutrients. So fresh fruits and vegetables, absolutely. Eat the whole foods as much as you can. But you just really hone in on, okay, if I'm overindulging on sugar and I don't like that I'm feeling bloated and I'm heavy and that's feeding into depression, that can be something you can check in with in regards to nutrition. Now, the other things about brain health is that it does feed off of glucose. That's its primary source, but then ketones. So I know people go on these ketogenic diets if you're not eating a lot of grains and starches, and some of your impoverished people on the island, they're probably walking around on, I don't know what their nutrition and what their access is, but they're probably going to be more in that. Well, I don't know what their glucose levels are, but the point is that when people are on mainly a fruit and veggie type of diet and there's no grains, you can be more into a ketogenic state, but the brain can feed that. Building blocks, that's going to be all your fresh fruits and vegetables, hydration. I just talked about that in regards to the electrical currents. So let's put P for practices in place. So practices can be, yes, what we feed our bodies. Practices can be about exercise. That's the oxygenation. But that can also be a gratitude project. So during COVID-19, I'll just paint you a little picture. I had ended a relationship of 14 years. I moved out of my home, lost my garden and my community of my neighbors, stay at home, all of my resources, my choir's gone, I can't connect with my Rotary. My triathlon group, we couldn't meet. Then my business takes a 90% hit. And then my cat dies. I got to listen to my kitty suffocate in the car. It was really not nice at all. So I had quite a few 1-2 punches to the gut, left, right, and center. And despite it all, I submerged myself with people that were incredible, that uplifted me, because that's what I needed at that time. I didn't have time to fall apart because we're leaders. We have to take care of ourselves. So that's how I got through, and that's how I ended 2020 better and stronger and more resilient, because I made time for exercise. I made time for gratitude every single day. And I really started to shift my mindset and meditate and pray. Yes, I cooked. I really submerged myself in whole food cooking, because you know what? It was cheaper for me in my circumstance, that, to buy a whole chicken and make all these meals made more sense to me, but I cooked anyway. So your world can be falling apart, but that doesn't give you an out of jail free card to let your lifestyle fall apart with it, because that's not going to set you up for success. And so what you've got to do is you've got to stop the process, the downward spiral in your brain, and you've got to take some time out to reflect and to hold space. If you're anxious, check in with yourself. Why are you anxious? What's worrying you? What's weighing you down? If you're depressed, what is bringing you down? Because if we don't stop and take time to hold space for the fear and the anger and the rage and the sadness and all the things that are weighing us down, how can we begin to process and move forward? So we've got to stop and take time. And what I did is I did meditation. I put that into practice. I actually did a 10-day silent meditation, and that was pretty incredible. But you don't have to do that. But I like to meditate first, because that allows me to listen in and check in with myself, but also to what God's message is. Where do I need to be led? And then from that, I like to make a list. And what I do is I create a problem list, and I give myself 3 solutions to that one problem. Okay. And then I pray on that, asking for resources, asking for strength. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage and strength to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. You have to make the time to really reflect through and hold space for those emotions, working through them, make your list. A problem and a solution list is my absolute favorite, because it really helps you to see opportunity. It helps you to see solutions that may not have been there before, but you've got to do the work. That's the action piece. And surrounding yourself by people, that's our Rotary, that's our community. So the Christmas, the Giving Tree Village, that was an incredible opportunity for us. And so I surrounded myself by ordinary people doing extraordinary things. I did not have time for negative Nancys. And if you're depressed and you're down and you really need to lift yourself up, check in with where your energy is going and who you're spending time with. because if it's not serving you and uplifting you and challenging you in a positive way, you might want to check in with that. Now, action and attitude. So attitude is not everything, but it might change everything. I'm going to skip this slide for a second because I want to go to my Black Knight. And my Black Knight is something that I really identified with in 2020, and this is how we might have all felt, and this might be exactly how we're feeling right now. So I don't know if you've seen Monty Python, The Holy Grail, British kind of satirical comedy. The White Knight's coming on the path with his coconuts, and he's wanting to pass through the Black Knight, and he's blocking the path. Black Knight says, "You have to fight me to pass." And the White Knight's going, "What are you talking about?" Well, so the White Knight, he's what you're seeing in this picture here is an arm is flying off and another arm is flying off, and that was me, you know, and I know a lot of you probably feel this way. And you know, the arm flying off is my home and the garden and the loss that I felt and saw. The other arm was the stay at home and the loss of community, it felt like. And the arm and the leg, there goes my cat, and then my business, there goes the other leg. So there's carnage everywhere. But this Black Knight, he said, "Come back here, I'll bite you with my teeth." The point of this message of the Black Knight was that no matter that he lost his limbs, he was still fighting. He had this "I can" attitude, this keep moving forward. And not only that, the R for spark is resources. He said, "Come back here, I'll bite you with my teeth," which is another resource. So if you feel you have nothing left, there's always going to be something. If you can just think creatively and imagine and look around, there's something else. There's always something you can do to improve, to help yourself, to help others. Always. It's incredible how resourceful and how creative we are as human beings. And it's actually really empowering if you tap into it. So I love the Black Knight. He's kind of my rock star, and that was kind of my powerhouse and who I channeled throughout all of last year and probably through this year too. But going back to the actions and the attitude, the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning is you start thinking. If it's depressed thoughts, check in with that. If it's anxious thoughts, check in with that. Your thoughts will lead to actions, and your actions will lead to results. So who do you want to be? Who are you designed and destined to be? What is your strength and what is your purpose? And whatever your thoughts are, if they're not aligning with that, we've got to work through it. And that goes back to the meditation. So taking action, I'm telling you all some tools and things, but you can take them and do nothing, or you can take them and do something. And that's the action. Now, I did want to take just a couple of seconds to talk about suicide prevention, because in this time, this is a really, really serious topic. And domestic violence is something you guys are seeing in St. Lucia, an increase in that. We are also seeing that here in the States. So this here is more of a serious part of the presentation. And what it is to get them to fight for life. So just some top tips here is if you are talking with someone and you're realizing they're isolated, there's a sudden change.
The height of security extends far beyond Capitol Hill.
Yep. Okay. And then, so if an individual has a sudden change in behavior, or they're starting to sell off important items that were important to them, or if they had some furry friends and they're giving those furry friends away or looking for other homes, those are massive red flags. And if you're seeing that, the first thing you need to do is get comfortable asking. Ask, "Hey, how are you doing today? Are you suicidal?" You have to ask that question point blank. And even though it's an awkward question to ask, if they really are suicidal, they will thank you and appreciate it. Because truth be known, people deep, deep, deep down don't want to end their lives. And so when we have these conversations, you know what, yes, I am suicidal, or I've been thinking about suicide, then you need to kind of think through your triage. Okay, so being empathetic, I can see that how suicide might be tempting for you right now to deal with this seemingly unbearable pain, but do you think it's the best way to cope? So what we're doing is we're going to try and shift their thinking. Think of that staircase that I showed you earlier, and to talk them away from a ledge. And how you do that is to start helping them to see something that's worth fighting for, And it might be a conversation that you have to dig a little, but then give them some really smart, concrete, time-sensitive goals. Maybe help them with a project in Rotary, but get them to be thinking forward. You know, what can we do in the next week? What can you do tomorrow? What can you do in the next month? Because if they're forward thinking, then that keeps them fighting for life. And if you have a time sensitive goal for them and help them to come up with it themselves, that will be far more powerful. But I just wanted to just take a moment to give you this slide because you're going to see it and you may not have all the credentials, but in conversation, you can help someone come from a ledge by just bringing hope to them and that life is worth fighting for, okay? R is for responsibility and resources. I've talked about that. You have to take personal responsibility in yourself. You have to show up for you. No one else is going to show up for you. So your life is your choice. And then finally is K for knowledge and kindness. And kindness, you know, President Lathon, he had given me this description of some of the challenges and obstacles that St. Lucia is facing right now. And he said, bottom line is that we need to care more and love our neighbor more and to be kind. Because kindness, if we spread that out, what we put out into the world, that's going to come back to us. Those who are in service are actually generally happier and more at peace and more content. And if we can shed that light to others and always keep learning and always keep growing, it's the sky's the limit for how we can influence and positively impact people. So there's always something that we can be doing. So the question I'm gonna leave you with is, are you content with where you are today, physically, mentally, and spiritually? Emotionally, we can put that in there. If it's yes, I'm gonna say, awesome, I'm gonna celebrate that. If you're content and happy and you're like, yeah, I'm doing good, amazing, share it, keep doing it. But if no, what's one thing you can improve on? And whatever that one thing is, you can either do nothing or you can actually change and improve something. So bottom line is that it does start with you, leaders of the community of Rotary of St. Lucia, the US, England. We have a mission. We've got some work to do. So let's get out there and shine our light and do it. Thank you.
Wow. What that was absolutely awesome, Lexi. I have to tell you, I got emotionally stirred listening